if you want to know how I started, but what I would do is I took the full sheet of 22 by 30 watercolor paper. I used Arches, and I used Arches 300 pound Arches. I didn't use what was the usual 100 and something pound Arches because it didn't really hold enough for what I wanted. I would take that 300 pound Arches, I'd bring it into the shower, I'd turn the shower on, and I'd soak it both sides so that it was absolutely soaking wet. Then I'd take it soaking wet, and I would bring it out and I'd lay it on a piece of heavy plexiglass that I had out on the big dining room table. And I would take it and with a natural sponge, after I laid it on the plexiglass, I would take out all the excess water. And when I had taken out the excess water, what I'd do then is I would wait till I got it to just what was the best and the right degree of wet. I wanted it not too wet and certainly not too dry. Then what I would do is I would start laying in the sky. Usually I would lay it in from the top down because the blues at the top were different than the blues at the bottom. So I would lay the sky in very quickly and try to get the entire sky. What I usually would be doing is I would be working from a sky that was actually there. So that did kind of give you an incentive to work pretty quickly. And I would kind of look to see what kind of a sky it was, and then I would just, you had to work pretty quickly on the sky because you can't put in any of those soft cloud shapes once it's dry. Oh, gee, you didn't have enough water. You know, the sky got done. You added in the violets or the violet grays and the lighter colors as you came down. The sky gets progressively warmer. It's not really all that blue at the water line, toward the horizon line. So, but of course you got to remember that I did this. What date did I do that? Is there a date on it?
1987.
Okay, so that was quite a long time ago, and I'm trying to remember exactly.
It's 24 years ago.
Yeah, 24 years ago. But what used to happen is that if anybody tried to engage me in any conversation or came in and bothered me while I was laying in the sky, I was, offering to kill them. Yeah, go away, don't talk to me, get the hell out of here, the usual. And then all of the other, naturally, as you can see, all the boats, all the detail had to be put in while it was completely dry. So some things had to be done when it was wet, but not too wet. And the violets, for example, would have been put in right. The blue up here would have gone in first. And those blues would probably have gone in with varying, diminishing degrees of intensity as they came down. The very pinks would probably have gone in next. Especially the stronger ones. The violets would have gone in at about that same time. But you had to work quickly because once it dried, you simply couldn't do that anymore. And many a time, if I was not fast enough and I hadn't done what I wanted to do in that length of time, I would take it into the shower and I'd wash it again. Take all the water, take the whole thing right off, take it out, and sponge it off again, and say, okay, give it another shot. Of course, you don't do that too many times, even if that's why I use 300-pound paper, because you certainly wouldn't have been able to do that. 300-pound paper also didn't have to be stapled on or very heavily. It didn't buckle the way a lighter weight watercolor paper. So they were done on a pretty heavy sheet. And then everything else, the water would go in a little bit later. And you wanted to keep those same colors because the water is going to reflect not necessarily one color of the sky. In this particular case, that I imagine that the water looked like that. Because generally speaking, that's what you saw was, what I saw was what you got. And none of these things, you wanted to put in a perfect wash so that you didn't, because you can't really go back in on things too well. That could be a little, and then naturally all of the detail work that was done on the boats, you could come back in, you see, you can come back in and put this streak of blue in. But you really couldn't mess around with this stuff up in here. And you certainly can't do anything with what is, generally, these were done in the, as you can see from the way that the light is hitting the buildings, they were late afternoon light. And the late afternoon light, coming from the western here, then everything else had to be absolutely dry before you started putting in any of the line work that, and if there were any other things that I used to do, I kind of forget them. It's a good idea to see down. One of the things that you really have to do, one of the good things about leaving it the hell alone once you've done it, is that if you don't, you have a tendency to say, oh, yeah, I think I really ought to go in there and fix that up a little bit. And usually the fixing it up a little bit screwed it up. Really, you're better off to leave it the way you had it the first time. So, one of the things that is true about watercolors is that it is a kind of an unforgiving material, and once that little orange mast went in there, there is no way that's coming out. That's it. That's in there. You try to take that out, you'd have orange. You'd have an orange mess everywhere. What? For the great big one? Well,
what's
you can see that this was a winter scene. Winter in the days when there were lots of, fishing boats. And it was done from a little bit of a different angle because I could tell that from the look of the long. You'd have thought it was done a lot later because I don't see the long building. Yeah, I don't see the long building. That might have been done the winter that it came down, I don't know. Beats me. Because if it was there, I did it. Might have been later too, there's no date on it, so who knows. But the sky is the same kind of sky that same process. Not, there, most of the color is in the foreground, which is not the usual thing that happens. There's practically no color except various shades of blues. Obviously, it's a different time of the day. You can see that there are no sharp lights and darks on the building. Different time of year. And it's a bigger piece of that I usually work in. I usually work at that. Did this one have a date on it? Oh, yeah, this does have a date. Yeah, 1986. Oh my, let's see. 1986, 96, 2006. What's that?
25 years ago.
25 years, yeah. Well, building was there then.
Now, look at how the detail in the building, the birds.
Oh, yeah. Well, the birds used to sit up there, wait for the ships to come in, the little fishing boats to come in and throw the stuff around, and the birds were very happy. So, trying to think if there was any of them that are a little bit different. Well, actually, they were working out here on this little one. This is probably old. Yeah, they were doing a lot of work out here. I can't remember when that was. Some of them have dates on them. I should have put dates on everything. That was dumb. Okay. Oh, look, here's the same one. So this one is dated, 1987. That's when they did that work. I think they built a whole new pier there. And there was one of them that I saw that has a sunken boat. Yeah. They were having the usual Provincetown fuss over whose responsibility it was to get the sunken boat out of the harbor. There's another one.